absence of any normal vetting or background check process at all for Donald Trump's nominees to run the U.S. government, we're hoping that a Rachel Maddow Show public servant announcement can help fill in some of the gaps about these folks who are set to get these big, important jobs. Today, we're looking at Trump's choice for something that has been called probably the most challenging technical, policy, and political job in government. The most challenging. This is a job that oversees $1 trillion plus in spending every year. $1 trillion. This job oversees healthcare for more than 150 million Americans. It's Medicare and Medicaid and Obamacare and kids' health insurance, everything. And again, this is considered to be maybe the single most technically difficult job in the whole U.S. government. And there's a reason you don't know the name of anybody who has ever held this job before. It's because these are not famous people. These are not the kind of people you have heard of. The people who can do this particular job are just not run-of-the-mill folks who pop up in all sorts of different political jobs and you've heard of them. This is a really nerdy, really specialized job for someone with incredible policy chops, right? This is for somebody who's got incredibly arcane, deep, technocratic, government, bureaucratic expertise. It is a job that Donald Trump has chosen to give to this guy, who does have 9 Daytime Emmy Awards. That's an achievement that Trump actually listed in writing when describing the qualifications of the man he has chosen to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, a man named Dr. Mehmet Oz. And, you know, I mean, 9 Daytime Emmys is 9 Daytime Emmys. I'm not really sure what else you need to know. But just in case, here are 5 additional things to know about Dr. Mehmet Oz. Thing number 1. Mehmet Oz won those 9 Emmy Awards for his daytime TV show, in which he mixed sort of normal health advice with other stuff. For example, the miracle of red palm oil, which he calls, quote, a revolutionary new way to live years longer. He says, quote, its red color is perfect because I think of it as a stop sign for aging. Dr. Oz suggested to his viewers that red palm oil can protect you from Alzheimer's. He also has promoted raspberry ketones. He calls them, quote, the #1 miracle in a bottle to burn your fat. Also, green coffee beans. Quote, you may think that magic is make-believe, but this little bean has scientists saying they have found a magic weight loss cure for every body type. This miracle pill can burn fat fast. On his daytime TV show, Dr. Oz hosted psychics who told his audience they could help them talk to dead people. Dr. Oz on his show told his audience that astrological signs, you know, like Sagittarius or whatever, quote, may reveal a great deal about our health. He told his audience that red onions can protect you from cancer. He set off a national panic over apple juice. He told his audience that the way you get breast cancer is by putting your cell phone in your bra. Dr. Oz introduced his audience to a man who he described as a scientist with expertise on genetically modified food. The man's only scientific credential was a business degree from a school run by the yoga guru, who is most famous for telling his followers that he can teach them to fly. Dr. Oz on his show repeatedly hosted a doctor who says that vaccines give you AIDS and also narcolepsy, who himself promoted an Italian quack who says that cancer is a fungus and it can be cured by taking baking soda in an IV drip. That guy went to prison for manslaughter, by the way. So that's thing number 1. Thing number 2. After years of him doing that kind of thing with his daytime TV show, in 2015, a group of prominent doctors got together and made an appeal to the medical school with which Oz was affiliated. They called on the medical school basically to fire Dr. Oz for endangering the public. They said, quote, Dr. Oz has manifested an egregious lack of integrity by promoting quack treatments and cures in the interest of personal financial gain, and has repeatedly shown disdain for science and for evidence-based medicine. Now, Dr. Oz did not respond directly to those charges in the letter, or to the lead author of the letter, calling him, quote, a quack and a fake and a charlatan. But he did say through a spokesman, quote, I bring the public information that will help them on their path to be their best selves. Nevertheless, the medical school, the hospital he was affiliated with, without spelling out exactly why, they did ultimately cut ties with Dr. Oz a few years later when he announced a run for Senate in Pennsylvania, whereupon a second group of doctors launched a road tour that was called Real Doctors Against Oz. These doctors traveled all across the state of Pennsylvania, warning people that they should not elect Dr. Oz to the Senate because he posed what they, as doctors, said was, quote, a major threat to public health. Dr. Oz simply isn't trusted by real medical professionals. That's thing number two. Thing number three. Last year, Dr. Oz announced that he had become a global advisor and stakeholder to something called iHerb. I think maybe we're just going to call it iHerb. They sell various vitamins and pills and potions over the internet.
Ashwagandha has been shown to help balance thyroid hormones and plays a crucial role in metabolism, energy levels, and mood regulation. By supporting your thyroid, ashwagandha can help you feel more energized and balanced throughout the day.
Ashwagandha has been shown to help balance thyroid hormones. It supports your thyroid, says man on TV. Man with 9, count them, 9 daytime Emmys. If you watch to the very, very end of that video, past the point where he's done extolling the virtues of ashwagandha for your thyroid, Dr. Oz does take a very brief moment to mention that if you do have any kind of pre-existing thyroid condition, maybe check with your doctor before starting any kind of new regimen, and that, of course, is a good thing. It's a particularly good thing in this case, considering that entities like the Cleveland Clinic, they don't say that ashwagandha is going to balance your thyroid hormones. What they say is, for some pre-existing thyroid issues, taking this supplement can actually make it worse. He's also promoted supplements from this company that he says, quote, probably slowed down his mom's Alzheimer's. He's repeatedly hyped weight loss drugs and then marketed the same company's supposed cures for the side effects from those weight loss drugs. There's also been a complaint against him filed with the FTC that alleges that he hasn't been disclosing his financial ties to this company when he has been shilling for all their stuff, which he has continued to do even after Trump named him to be the head of the U.S. government's trillion-dollar health agency. Because, yeah, why should a little government job like that stop you from cashing in on stuff that, you know, probably cures Alzheimer's? Maybe. Call now. Operators are standing by. Thing number 4. Dr. Oz once ran for the United States Senate. He ran for a Senate seat in a state where he did not live. For the 2022 election, Dr. Oz announced that he was running for Senate in the great state of Pennsylvania, and that, of course, is a fine and proper thing for anyone to do if they live in Pennsylvania. The problem with his run is that he lived in New Jersey. And we know that because he once invited People magazine to do an MTV Cribs-style tour of his New Jersey mansion, which has 6 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, we learned on the tour. I mean, there's more bathrooms even than all the bedrooms. It's like spare bathrooms, extras for anyone. But none of them are in Pennsylvania. Dr. Oz told People magazine that he and his wife had lived in this house, which again is in New Jersey, for 20 years. Which is why people were understandably confused when he launched a campaign for Senate in a nearby but still totally separate and distinct U.S. state. That got worse and weirder for him in the last few months leading up to his campaign, when he was insisting that he was now a full-time permanent resident of Pennsylvania. He said his in-laws had a house in Pennsylvania and he was paying them rent to stay there. But simultaneously, in the lead up to his campaign, he also posted more than 20 photos on Instagram from his New Jersey mansion. So that's thing number 4. And finally, thing number 5. If Dr. Oz actually gets this job, he would be in charge of, again, a $1 trillion agency overseeing healthcare for over 150 million Americans. One of the most complex, technically demanding, specialized, and bureaucratically sophisticated jobs in all of government. As a medical doctor and a TV host with, yes, 9 daytime TV Emmys, but 0 experience working in government, Dr. Oz has nevertheless shown a little leg about his approach to the ethical and financial complexities that he might confront at scale at this new $1 trillion government job. During the COVID crisis, for example, he used his TV show and more than 24 appearances on Fox News to hype one particular drug as what he described as essentially a miracle cure for COVID. He not only hyped it on TV over and over and over again, he also lobbied the Trump family directly to promote this drug. He advocated that the FDA should give the drug emergency authorization as a treatment for COVID. The drug, sadly, turned out not to work against COVID at all. It had no effect on COVID. Actually, people who took it were more likely to die than people who didn't take it. But what no one knew while Dr. Oz was promoting the bejesus out of this one drug was that he and his wife held hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock in companies that made the drug. And that turns out to be kind of a theme with him. If he does get this gig from Trump, this $1 trillion gig, one of the things he's going to be in charge of is Medicare. And one of the things Oz has shilled for more aggressively than almost anything else, more than the magic fat-burning raspberry stuff and the green coffee, more than the magic lavender oil he says will fix your leg problems. I mean, if there's one thing he really, 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 really wants to sell you, it is privatized Medicare. Medicare Advantage is run by private health insurance companies for profit. It competes with traditional Medicare. And Dr. Oz is associated with a company that is one of the most aggressive known telemarketers that calls up old people to convince them to give up their Medicare and sign up with one of these for-profit plans instead. He, in fact, has advocated that everyone in the country should be signed up for one of these private plans, which means, in other words, he wants to privatize Medicare, which itself is a big deal. But separate and apart from him wanting that as a policy for the country, what nobody knew until he had to file his financial disclosures for that failed Senate campaign from a state he didn't live in. What nobody knew about his shilling for all these privatized Medicare plans, what nobody knew about that until his financial disclosures came in, was that while he was shilling and shilling and shilling for these privatized Medicare plans, he owned hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock in 2 of the companies that sell these plans. It is kind of a theme for him. Ka-ching! But there you have it. 5 things to know about Donald Trump's pick to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz. This has been a Rachel Maddow Show public servant announcement.